Well, welcome in everyone. It's good to see the little icon of your faces as I'm watching some of the comments roll in. I am not Jim Azevedo, the marketing director here at Drafted Digital. My name is actually Nick Thacker. I'm the vice president, Drafted Digital, specifically in what's called the author success department or division. And I'm excited to kind of take the reins from Jim today. Unfortunately, I'm not Jim, so it's going to be a little less polished and smooth probably than what he's able to bring because he's a pro. But we're gonna hack our way through it the best we can. No, I'm just kidding. I'm excited today because this is a topic. What we're talking about today, we have a professional in here on a topic that I honestly know nothing about. I've just been in the marketing world prior to becoming, working at Drafted Digital. I was an author, of course. I'm still an author, and so I did all the marketing elements myself. I was in a marketing department at a PPC firm back in the day. I've done marketing all the time, and almost everything within that bucket, with the exception of any PR stuff. I never touched any of that. So I'm really excited to introduce Jason Jones here. He's a PR professional. I'm just going to give a brief intro, and then we can jump into things. But Jason's a founder of Jones Literary, which is a Nashville publicity firm. And there he oversees the strategic planning, business development, and PR campaign execution. So lots to unpack there. He works with authors, experts, publishers, media, including producers and editors, places like Fox News, CNN, CBS, ABC, all those, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, dozens of other national outlets, as well as hundreds of faith-based media outlets. So he's got some experience. Specifically in publishing, he's got 6 years with one of the world's largest and oldest publishing houses, where he's led campaigns for 11 New York Times bestselling titles. And he's got over 25 years of experience in public relations. Prior to that, he directed PR efforts for a Memphis-based firm. And to throw here, pun intended, curveball, he was in professional baseball before that, where he managed minor league PR for the St. Louis Cardinals. And Jason, remind me real quick, who's the affiliate for the Cardinals? Is it just called the Cardinals? Or was it another
Memphis Redbirds are the AAA affiliate. That's where I was for several years. Yeah.
Well, welcome on, man. That's quite the. I feel like we're done here. That was a lot. So we just hope you guys got something out of it. We'll wrap up. No, thanks for being here with us, man. I hope I covered everything correctly. You want to do anything to change in that or to add?
No, you did. You did a great job. I'd never know that you were the fill-in, man. This is terrific. I feel very important. No, that covers it. I think I probably need to freshen that bio up a little bit, though. It's been a few years since I wrote that, and you mentioned it on your intro. Just you've done a lot of marketing. I've done a lot of PR. Those things really started to the line between them is really started to blur. I don't know a lot of people anymore that really know where that line is. So we're doing more marketing, but we're easing into that. I've got smart people that do that for me, but I'm a traditional old school PR guy. So I am doing my best in my twilight years here, as I creep up over 50 to stay, in the know and yeah, we got a thriving business here in Nashville, doing great. Doing a lot of PR work, some social media, we're building websites, getting into doing some publishing here soon. Doing all sorts of great things. So thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. I'm glad to talk.
No, this is going to be great. I'm excited. I got already like 5 different directions I want to go with this. I want to talk about your work specifically at the PR firm. I know you guys have launched something new, but before we even get into that, I want, if we can you just dig in a little bit? You've mentioned it, right? We were talking about it before we went live, but this marketing versus PR, I know they're not enemies, but one is often not the other. And you said the lines are being blurred. Can you explain, though, when you say PR, public relations, what are you talking about? How is that not marketing, or how is it related? What do you mean when you say PR?
Yeah, well, in my mind, in my 52-year-old mind, PR is, radio, TV, newspapers, magazines, and 15, 20 years ago, online outlets came into play, and 10 years ago, podcasts came into play. And like I said, everything at that point began to blur a little bit because so much of our PR work and our big wins today are digital. You'd much rather be on some of these big outlets' websites than you would in their print publication, of course. But at the same time, I've got a foot in both worlds, because you can't abandon the traditional stuff. I mean, there's a lot of older folks that still buy a ton of books, that still, they like their TV and radio. And there still are a few people out there that read print publications, but our older audiences aren't going to find books on Book Talk. So you got to have a foot in both of those worlds. Now, I don't, like I said, I have smart people on my team who can do Book Talk and all the social stuff. But for me, the most important piece of this whole thing, whether it's digital or new school PR or old school, you got to be able to tell a story. You got to be able to very succinctly describe to a podcaster or a TV producer or a radio producer, whoever it is, who you are, what your story is, why it's important and relevant for their audience. Those things haven't changed. So, all that has changed really is who you're reaching out to. And those formats are so different. Podcasters are the deep dive. They want you to be authentic. They're going to give you an hour to tell your story. In TV, you might get 30 seconds. So you got to be able to tell your story in a lot of different ways. And those are the kinds of things we help prepare you to do. So I guess the biggest change over the last 15, 20 years for us has been just the sheer number of people we have to reach out to, and the number of ways that we have to be able to tell our stories. It's just when I remember I first sat down in my chair at HarperCollins Christian at Thomas Nelson Publishers, 2007, and they set a list down in front of me and told me they wanted me to call a bunch of these folks and start sending out some faxes, if you can believe that. And a lot has changed in the last 18 years. So
were you working for Michael Hyatt then? Was he CEO?
Yeah, he was. Smart guy. He's been ahead of the game for a long time.
Sure.
But yeah, I remember one of my first trips, 2008 early, we went to New York. We're sitting in a producer's office there at Fox News. And, I asked one of these guys if they were on Twitter, and they told me that was the dumbest thing they'd ever heard in their life. And why would they do that? And, and now for all intents and purposes, that's where news breaks. That is the news. I mean, you're going to get it on Twitter, or on
crazy,
X,
I mean, I don't know how I would watch. So kind of as a brief, we're talking stories here, so I'll tell a story. It's kind of what we do, but I don't know how to watch the news. Like that's the story. We have a house in Hawaii, and there was a tsunami scare a couple nights ago, and of course, 7:15 their time was like 11:15 our time. So my wife and I are staying up late but I'm like, we can't turn the TV on because it's like a Roku TV. Like do I download the CNN app? Like I just don't know how to do it. I get news from Twitter, Reddit, Facebook. I wish I didn't. I wish I wouldn't admit that live on air, but you're exactly right. Like the world has changed a little bit. But you mentioned it too, but you're finding there's still a reason to reach out to these legacy media networks, right? There's still a reason because there's people consuming.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, traditional media builds credibility. Digital media builds buzz, and that's kind of the so you need both.
Okay.
But yeah, and I mean, you said it a minute ago too. News is and this is a rabbit hole we could spend a lot more than an hour going down. We don't have to do that, but news isn't really news anymore. We don't get news. We get editorial and we get opinions. And so who do you trust? Who do you believe? What do you, I can turn on the traditional news, but depending on whether I'm watching Fox News or CNN, I mean, it could two completely different stories, and some stuff won't even be covered on one network or the other. So you got to know your audience too. And that's the thing these days. And you can't just, if you're a conservative author, you don't have much reason to pitch your stuff to CNN and vice versa. So you got to be familiar with your audience. And that wasn't the case, 15, 20 years ago. So that's changed a great deal as well. And, just part of the game. There's so many, because of the proliferation of podcasts and digital media, there's a million micro audiences out there now, and as has always been the case, your book's not for everybody. It's never been for everybody, but it's particularly nowadays, you got to really connect, plug into those micro audiences. You got to know where they're found, who the influencers are in that space, and when I say that, I mean, for the most part, podcasters and digital influencers. There are some folks, that cross over into the cable news outlets, and other, some of those folks have podcasts or interact, on X and other places, but you just got to know where your audience is, and you got to be able to find them and connect with them. And it can be tough. When we first started doing all this many years ago, I could send out, I had 100 outlets I'd send something out to. It was, all the legacy media folks, newspapers, radio, TV, magazines, and that was for the most part it. And on the Christian side of the ledger, which is where I was working, you had your faith-based media outlets, and there were 15 or 20 of those, and bada bing, bada boom, you're kind of done. And now it's endless, the number of them. And so it requires a lot more time, it requires a lot more tools, and you end up spreading yourself really thin. So I think that would be, I guess, a good segue for me to just kind of interject my biggest piece of advice for anybody that's working on a book, wanting to promote a book, do PR around a book. you got to start early. I mean, really, really, really early. We get a lot of people that come to us that, I'll get an email. Hey, can you help me with PR for my book? Yeah, great. When does it release? Next month. Yeah, there's not a lot I can do for you, honestly.
Yeah.
Not only are we booked out, a few months, down the road, but if you haven't started doing any promotion or PR, before now, you're kind of in trouble. So I say you got to start at least a year early while you're writing the book, if not sooner. Start engaging and priming the pump, building an audience of your own. Because it takes a lot of time. Sometimes you got to follow up with a lot of these folks 5, 6, 7 times, and you don't want to do that every day. You may follow up once a week, but you're looking at 5 or 6 follow-ups is 2 months, And the thing is too, with podcasters, that the way they've changed the game for us, I don't know what their production schedules are. Some of them produce a show daily, some are weekly, some, they may get in the studio one day every quarter and record 25 episodes. It's not like it used to be where I can pitch, morning television producers and I can pitch radio folks know they got a daily show and they need guests.
Sure.
So that's all changed. And, the other part of that is too, there used to be a lot more daily programs. Those are going away, especially on the radio side of things. And so there are fewer opportunities out there, and then there are more books being published than ever. So, I think last I saw, there was upwards of 1 million books, between 800,000 and 1 million books self-published last year.
I believe it. Yeah, I think half of them are mine.
A lot of,
and that's kind of what I wanted to ask, because we talked about this too. You're very predominantly the nonfiction world, specifically faith-based books and resources, which is in this case very different from the indie publishing fiction world, where speed is one of our main marketing tactics what levers we can pull. Right, obviously. At some point we lose quality, but that's kind of the name of the game here, is if you can maintain a faster pace than traditional publishing, the 18-month cycle from, a concept or pitch to finished book, then we can win, then we can actually carve out a little niche for ourselves. But again, that's in fiction world, but in nonfiction as well, because I have some books that are nonfiction myself. I'm indie, and so that's one of the benefits of being independent, is I don't have to wait around for edits and things like that. Of course, we lose quality sometimes when we don't have a team to work with. But my point is, I don't know that I would be able to wait a year or think a year ahead, right? So is there a difference between the fiction world and the nonfiction world and PR as well?
Oh man, absolutely. And I we don't do a ton of fiction. I don't do a ton of kids books. And those two things they're absolutely, it's just a different job. There is some crossover in the sense that there are some fiction authors who, to be effective as a fiction author, you got to be an expert, maybe in a particular region of the country. All your books are set in a particular place, or they're on a particular topic, and so you've done all the research and you live in this place. There are some things that could lend themselves to you being an expert and a resource on certain things. And so as news breaks, something happens in a place or in a certain industry, you got some knowledge, but for the most part, it's reviews, and it's it's chatter in those communities, and fiction readers are just a different breed. They're different folks than those that are out there reading autobiographies and and political commentary and those kinds of things. So, but you're right. You said something really interesting about. It's a huge advantage that indie authors have, and you could, something big happens in the world, you could churn something out in the next 2 or 3 weeks, get 25, 30,000 words down. And then a month later, you got a book, in the marketplace that's ready for people to, while the topic is still, current. You could never do that. Traditionally published books, you've taken a year and a half before something hits a shelf if you're lucky. And so that's a huge advantage. And I think that's an advantage that a lot of indie authors on the nonfiction side have to really play up, because what they don't have is they don't have that, that Simon and Schuster logo on the spine of their book. And while that is, that's really changed a lot too the last number of years. 10 years ago, if this book was self-published, we'd have a really hard time getting placement, on radio, TV, podcasts, but not anymore. That's really come a long, long way. Yeah, you can publish a fantastic looking book, that no one would know was self-published. And if you didn't, open up the, the front cover and see where it came from. But at the same time, there's a lot of garbage out there too. And anybody can publish a book, which is a great thing and a not so great thing sometimes.
Absolutely.
So
And we've been talking about that since the launch of the Kindle. Amazon made it possible for everyone, Kindle Direct Publishing. You just, hey, take that Word document that you kind of and just upload it, and there you go. Right. Now you got a book out. Yeah. And then everybody in the world did that, overnight. And so you get a lot more crap out there. But the gatekeepers were no longer there, for better or worse, right? That you have more in the market. So you're going to have more books that are high quality, but you're also going to have a lot more books that are lower quality as well. And there early on, there was a distinct taboo. If it was self-published, it was bad. It was automatically just labeled. Where that's not the case anymore. I mean, I got my books behind me, and I defy anyone to tell me the difference. I'm using the same printer. I'm using the same, digital printing versus offset has come so far. Like, it looks the same. It feels the same. It smells the same. Cover design, you've got to put the effort into that. Got to put the effort into the editing and the quality. But I'm reiterating what you're saying there. From our perspective as indie authors primarily, that's what we work with at Draft to Digital. So we are seeing it become less and less different. I was just curious about that as well. Are these outlets that you're reaching out to, do they care? Do they know? Are they asking that question? Is this self-published, or by the time it gets to you and you pitching it on behalf of the author, it probably doesn't matter as much anymore, right?
Yeah, no, that's it. And that's one of the big advantages. If you are one of those self-published folks that can afford a resource like a PR firm like ours, I mean, those outlets are going to open our emails. They know us, they trust us, we send them good stuff, so that vetting isn't as, necessary. And they honestly, if it doesn't come from us, they don't have a lot of time they're not going to read your book. They get, a stack of books every week.
Sure.
A lot of it is, you mentioned cover design. I mean, 90% of these self-published authors, that's where they kill themselves before they ever start. They try to go cheap on a cover design. And I can tell right away, if you weren't willing to spend a few extra bucks to create a professionally designed cover, then, and that cover copy. Yeah, I can tell 3 or 4 sentences into your back cover copy whether it's something I even want to open or not. So you can't cut corners there. But I remember, since we're telling stories, again, early on in my publishing career, I remember I was on a trip in New York. I was in the offices at the Today Show, and the producer there, a longtime producer, Jackie Levin, I went in her office, and Jackie literally had books stacked from the floor to the ceiling around 3 walls of her office.
Jeez.
And I said something to the effect of, "Wow, how many books do you get a year?" or something to that. She said, "Oh, this is just this month."
Oh my God.
There must have been, easily a couple thousand books,
Yeah.
And again, that was 2009, maybe 8. So 17, 18 years ago. So again, that's changed. But it's really important that you put together a professionally packaged book, and that when you're pitching these media outlets, you got to get right to the point. They don't have time to read a long email. Again, you got to be able to know exactly what they want to know. You got to feed them that in a professional way, but a personable way too. Nobody wants to read, something that looks like AI or robot wrote it. But you got to know what to send it and who to send it to and when to send it. So there's a lot of different factors that come into play there. But if something comes across their desk, compelling subject line, I can see that this is something that's probably timely. I open it up, the first couple of sentences. Okay, this person's got some credentials. They want to talk to me about something that's timely. They're available. Okay, I've got a PDF here that I can open up and look. I mean, you got a professionally designed press kit, and you got everything that you need. You're separating yourself out from 95% of the folks out there.
Yeah.
So those are all really, really important, because they just get too much, and they filter things out real quick. A lot of times, in fact, if you don't write the right subject line, and they're sitting there looking at their inbox, and they got 50 emails that they can see here, they won't even open it. If the subject line isn't something that tells them immediately why you're writing and what it's about, and that can be tough to do in 10 or 15 words.
Probably who it comes from too. I mean, if I'm sending something out to some local newspaper, they've never heard of me before, but they get something from you. You've got your PR firm, you got credibility, you've got the experience, you've got the name recognition. They're going to see your name on there, and they're going to, I'm going to open Jason's and see what he's got this week. Or is that how it works? I mean, is that the art of PR? Is that your specialty? That's why we would pay you to do this, because you've got those connections, right? Like, I wouldn't know where to begin.
Yeah.
I can build a PR kit. I can make it look really good. That's the marketing part, but where do I send it? What do I do? Do I just buy an email list of a million people and hope for the best?
That'd be an expensive email list, man.
Yeah. By the way,
I mean, that's really
listening. Never buy an email list. I run off your email, and do not do that. That's bad.
Yeah. That's where most people feel like they're at. And that's why, I guess, shameless plug, we started a few years ago, about 5 years ago. We started getting a lot of queries from self-published folks who didn't have the resources to put together a full service campaign with us. And even if they did, a lot of them aren't ready for that, so they were just kind of, they went away without really another option. But we figured out that, hey, a lot of them had, a solid book, didn't have the resources. All they needed was a press kit and an email list and some scripts to help them write these pitches in the right way, and a little coaching consultation. So we decided to put together a little package that indie folks could afford. And, we've done pretty well with those. I think people have been really happy with them. But the thing is, here's the key to that. A lot of those outlets on that media list, I'm not giving you the email for the producer at the Today Show. You're going to get, it's a lot of local, it's a lot of regional, smaller outlets, because those are attainable for you. That's where you need to start. Especially as a first-time author. You don't want your first interview to be on Fox and Friends, because it's not going to be good. If you haven't sat down in that chair and had that light come on, and been hit with that question you're not sure how to answer, man, that's bad juju. You don't want that to be your first, your biggest one shouldn't be your first one. So start small. Let's get some seasoning. Let's understand how quickly that 5-minute interview goes by. Figure out what you want to say, how to slide that into the conversation, when your time's running out. You just need some seasoning. And so what happens then is you put together a few good interviews, solid interviews. Now I got a clip that I can send to a larger outlet and say, hey, look, I've done some media. I got some experience. I'm not going to be a bust on your program. And that increases your odds greatly of getting on those bigger programs, and you work your way towards that. So we help you do that.
Ryan Holiday out in Seguin is a little bookstore that he started. I was talking about PR and he, it's the game of starting small in local markets, smaller news productions, and then just kind of cycling up, just using exactly what you said, just now you have a clip, now you've got experience, now you've got the credibility because hey, he's been on a show, he knows what he's talking about. He's going to give me the sound bites. I'm going to speak in sound bites instead of ramble on for an hour. It's going to make it all easier for them. And you just kind of cash in, you just kind of like what's the right word? Trade up, right? To like bigger and bigger markets.
Right.
I want to go back real quick. You mentioned that, this press kit keeps coming up. What is that? If I'm an author, doesn't matter, or maybe it does matter, fiction, nonfiction, whatever. What is a press kit? What's in it? What do I need to do to make it look professional so it has a chance of being seen?
Yeah, well, a press kit for a fiction author and a nonfiction author is going to be very different. There are some common elements, but for a nonfiction author, for instance, it's a press kit's going to include everything that a news producer or an influencer is going to want to know in a really digestible fashion. It needs to be clean, easy to read. We don't need giant blocks of copy. I need to see a headshot, a bio, maybe 150 words. Credentials, we always bullet point those out. So-and-so's got 35 years teaching at the collegiate level, 50 years experience professionally as a CPA, whatever it is. I need to know why you're credentialed to be on my show.
Okay.
I need to know your specific topics and areas of expertise. I need to see your social. So we always link to their social, because any outlet that books you is going to want to check out your social feeds, make sure you're not a crazy person. They also love it when they know that you can drive traffic to their show, because they're in that game too. Sure. So if I jump over to your Instagram feed and see you got 3 million followers, then, that goes a long, long way. I want to see some previous clips if you've done anything. All this stuff needs to be there. I need a short description of your book. Give me some suggested questions, some bullet points on why your book is relevant and timely, and then if you got endorsements, those are great too. But
sure,
those need to be, if you're sending it out to local media folks that are known around town, but you're sending it out to larger national type outlets. Obviously, they need to be a known quantity. These folks to make an impact. But those are the general. Generally, those are the types of content that need to be in a press kit, because you're going to have that TV producer radio producer, podcaster, whoever, they're going to pop it open and they're going to maybe give you 15, 20 seconds. And if it doesn't catch me, then it's on to the next. So they're not going to read a bunch of copy. It's got to be clean. We try to make ours, of course, they're branded in a way that folks know that they've come from Jones Lit, and we got great looking press kit. But I've sat in enough of those offices and asked those questions. I just know what they want. I know what they're looking for. So we give it to them in a way that the most important information is not on page 4. They're not going to dig for it. You got to make it easy.
That's where that experience that you have is more worth its weight in gold, right? So if someone's engaging your services, you've got, I don't want to say template because everything's going to be a little different, but like you said, your brand, they know it's coming from Jones Lit. But if I don't have, let's say I have a great book and it's timely and it's right up your alley for stuff that you can help me with the PR, but I don't have those endorsements. I don't have the credibility. Are you helping me get that as well as the author? If I engage your firm, say, hey, look here, I'll get this package, put together the press kit. Will you help me find smaller outlets to get that endorsement to kind of get the ball rolling? Okay.
Yeah. And we'll help you mine, your experience, your bio, and kind of figure out ways to make you as credentialed as we can. But there's only so much I can do too. I mean, I'm not going to pull that out of thin air, but and for my purposes too. I mean, and that's, I said earlier, a lot of those folks, even if they had the resources, they weren't ready for a full service campaign with us. I'm not going to pitch just everybody to Fox News. I mean, you're not, that destroys my credibility with them. So we'll figure out where you belong, and get you in front of that audience. It's again, I mean, you'd much rather, and for a lot of these people too, for anybody really, you'd rather be on just the right 3 or 4 podcasts than you would be on the Today Show. I mean, because those podcast audiences are extraordinarily loyal. And man, they are targeted. I mean, it is, you find your audience, I mean, down to the nth degree in these podcasts, with, a big TV program. Now, of course, they're not going to have you on if they don't think you hit a fairly significant segment of your audience. But a lot of those folks may be ironing their shirt to get ready to go to work today, then getting the kids ready for school. It's on, but it's not, a podcast listener is got their earbuds and they're there because they want to be there. They're on the treadmill, they're in the car, they're listening,
As you said, this is the marketing side, like it's all much more targeted, where TV is that is the mass media. That is the original traditional legacy, whatever you want to call it, mass market appeal, which just means everyone's watching it, but not everyone's exactly the same as far as interest and stuff. And, podcast is going to be much more, just by definition, is going to be much more narrow in the market, targeting wise. I wanted to ask you this too, and maybe not even ask you, but kind of segue into the thing, the local stuff a little bit. You are actually someone's favorite here. We've got a comment. I think we can get it popped up here, but if not, I can read it. But it's from I guess first name Storyteller, last name Susan. It's a great name for an author. Jason Jones, my favorite. His book Landing Local Media is a must read.
Hey, Susan.
So tell me about this book, and tell me. Obviously, it's about local media. Tell me about local PR in general, like why that would be important.
Yeah, well, the biggest piece of it is that it's attainable. Again, you're relevant because you're in your hometown market. If you're an expert, we had the big announcement yesterday. The Fed was not going to lower interest rates. Maybe you're a banker and you're in your mid-sized market. You're in Cincinnati or Memphis or somewhere, and all of a sudden, you may be the only person with that particular expertise reaching out to that outlet to say, hey, I can talk about what the Fed announced yesterday, and so that alone shrinks the competition. But you're not out there competing with, Today's Show's not going to have you on to talk about that Cincinnati banker man. They got plenty of other contacts. So it greatly increases your odds of getting a booking. But you can walk in the front door and introduce yourself too, and you're a person you're not just an email in their inbox. But again, it comes back to that getting that experience in that smaller setting. You can, that's something you can do, and it may take you a minute, but it's doable. That's the biggest reason that you need to start locally, and like Ryan Holiday said, and you work your way forward from there. So still plenty of radio in local markets.
Sorry about that. I was just gonna say, would you recommend walking into a local news station? I mean, I didn't think you could Isn't it all just like it's just one guy in a green screen, and then all the production's offline now, or out of the building, or what does it look like these days? Can you just walk in there?
Yeah, it's been a minute since I walked into a local TV station, to be honest with you. But no, I don't think it's all outsourced and green screen out. And I wouldn't recommend just walking in the door.
Sure.
No,
Okay.
I mean, of course not. But you could, if you were smart enough about it, when they go off the air and these folks may have a minute to talk to you,
Okay.
you could do that. But drop off a thank you note and things like that. It's a more personal venture.
Yeah.
So starting locally is just something that I recommend for everybody. And the thing is too, you may get, maybe you get that big hit, on the CNN or the Newsmax or wherever, but local news is something that you can do continually for years. I remember one of our authors, when I first started at HarperCollins, I actually worked on a few cookbooks back then. And interestingly enough, I'm from Memphis, and one of our authors at that point was from Memphis, and so I had some history still back there with a couple of outlets, and so I reached out to them and thought, hey, let's get Jennifer on. The Super Bowl's coming. Let's get Jennifer on to talk about some fun things you can cook up for Super Bowl parties. And so they had her on. They had a big spread there in the studio, and of course they loved her. Everybody did. And she became a fixture. And in fact, she eventually, a year or two later, had a segment, on the program.
Cool. Yeah.
And so, but that's the kind of thing you can do with your local media. You can become friendly with these folks, and really carve something out for yourself that's lasting.
And again, it's more targeted
So,
because it's local. It's
right.
it's your community. It's your neighborhood.
Right.
But like you said, you wouldn't want to just walk into a place and, hey, I'm going to interrupt this show to let you know that I'm here. Let's put me on. Probably not going to go over super well, right? So that would be all the more reason to look at a firm like yours. And specifically, wanted to ask about the Local PR Toolkit that you guys have. What is that?
Yeah.
And I know that it's like a newer thing you guys are doing, right?
Well, yeah, I don't know of anybody else that's doing it, to be honest with you, but it's fairly new for us still. We take indie authors and we help you build these elements out. And we build you a press kit. We're going to build you a media list of your local media, and then some regional folks and some podcasts and things too that are relevant to your particular genre or topic. We're going to do some coaching calls with you, talk through all these things, do some media training, mock interviews, things like that. We're going to give you some scripts to help you write these great pitches, because even if you're local, you still got to write a compelling email.
Sure.
You can't just walk in the door and say, hey, I'm local and I wrote a book. Nobody cares.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, whether it's national or local, all they care about is, okay, why is that important to my audience? Why does my audience care? So you still got to figure out how to do that. And we do that. So that's what it is. And it's a really affordable, consultation package that we've put together for indie folks. And there's just a lot of them, they're coming out of the woodwork. So
can I ask what that costs an author, or is that something, is it a range, or how does that work?
No, the toolkit's $19.95, so just under $2,000. And the thing is with the toolkit, honestly, I'd tell you the media list is worth it just on its own. It's impossible to come up with these media.
Part, yeah.
Yeah, you just can't. I guess you could. Nothing's impossible, but it would take you just hours and hours and hours to try and find these folks' email, and even then, you don't know that they're the right folks. So that's the biggest piece of it. And the consultation package. So we do the coaching calls. We've got one of our media trainers spent many years on the air at a national network as a host and a producer. So she knows her stuff. We're going to help you figure out how to tell your story in a that 5-minute TV segment, that 15-minute radio segment, and that hour-long podcast. We talk through all those things. Of course, you get a copy of the book,
There it is, yeah.
And so it's a nice little package, and it's something that a lot of people have been able to do. So,
but just to clarify, this probably wouldn't be a great fit for a fiction author, just because it's a little harder to pull the local aspect from it, or could it be?
It could be. We speak to fiction authors a little bit in the book, and we can talk with fiction authors about how to do what they need to do. But it is more primarily focused towards nonfiction folks.
Okay.
By
way of example, actually, this is actually a question I have personally, selfishly want to ask. So I'm working on it'll be a new series. I haven't started writing it yet because Draft to Digital keeps me plenty busy. But it's modern day thriller mystery. But the historical context is Colorado mining So I'm pulling real places. You got Uray, Silverton, all that kind of stuff, and the real things that happened in those mines. I imagine, and maybe I'm wrong, but this is what I wanted to ask. I imagine that would be a much cooler, I should say, a much better fit for local firms, local news outlets and firms and all to pick up a fiction book, because then it's relevant to a locale. Is that true? Would that be something
Yeah,
that would work?
I think so. I would. The first place I'd go is the closest major or mid-sized market to the setting of your book. I mean, yeah, that would be my first thought.
So
But
hit
yeah,
up
you're on
Denver.
track.
Look, the
Yep.
Denver's obviously a large market, so they've got plenty of news outlets there, multiple to choose from, I guess. But yeah, okay,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
And maybe there's other mining towns. Maybe there's places in West Virginia that, all throughout the Rust Belt. Maybe those folks will be more interested in your book than others. If they got family that's been in the mining business, and so maybe you hit some of the markets in those places.
That's cool. Yeah, I was just thinking, because now there's a geographic aspect of this, even though it's fiction. Hey, here's a guy who lives here. Is writing this book. He's an author. But it's also set in this time. I don't know. It was just kind of spitballing there a little bit. But that would be something that I would imagine would be an easier sell as a PR guy than just, hey, some random fiction author with some random book, some sci-fi thing. Who cares?
Yeah, well, I mean, but there are ways to attach. Even if you're a sci-fi author, there's big new summer films coming out. It's sci-fi. Let's talk about let's talk about that. Why do people line up around the block for these movies? What's the appeal? Well, how do you and then you get this guy that writes science fiction and maybe been a fan all his life, and you can there's ways to tie yourself into events and things that are happening in the world. Romance writers, a lot of times they're pitching themselves around Valentine's Day because they know romance.
Yeah, of course.
What's the best summer read for your vacation? There's a lot of different events and calendar events and things that you can attach your pitches to. But
Well,
yeah,
I
just
hope
your random. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I know. I was thinking. A comment just popped up from Natalie, and I hope this isn't putting you on the spot too much, but kind of in the same context, like taking someone like this. She's a professional banker for 35 years. She's got a debut memoir. Two French words smashed. That's hard. I write nonfiction on lived experience. How would I introduce myself in the media? I will say before you answer, I do know, and maybe Natalie, this would be good for you. Memoir is just a tricky genre in general, because unless you're a celebrity, unless you're a known entity, people they don't care about someone they don't know, and so it's got to be a really compelling story. But let's talk PR in regards to how would you? Again, I'm sorry if I'm putting you on the spot here, but how would you approach this? How would you talk to Natalie and say, here's how we package something together that would be intriguing to some local outlets?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing to remember, is that your book is not news. Your book is never the news. Nobody cares that you wrote a book. It's about the audience, what's in it for them, right? So if you wrote a memoir and your experience was in banking, and maybe you suffered just crippling anxiety, or whatever it was, that's an issue in the world. Everyone has crippling anxiety nowadays. So maybe you could say, hey, look, here's how I navigated this, and in the midst of it, I got a divorce, and I had but I figured it all out. Here's how I came to that. Maybe you. And then, oh, by the way, we have so and so here to talk with us today. She's the author of, and so,
Okay.
and in the course of that interview, you mentioned a couple of times, not you don't overdo it ever, but well, in my book, and that was the reason I wrote the book, or you mentioned the book. It's on the lower third there, and but the book is never the news. So what you're never reaching out to the news station to say is, hey, I've been in banking for 35 years, and I recently publish a memoir. They don't care about that. Again, you got to ask yourself that question: why does the audience care? Who is it for? Why do they care? What is the benefit to them in reading your book? Yeah,
that's marketing.
That's what
101.
you're presenting,
and that's where I think PR marketing are that we're answering the same question: is why does the audience care? Why are they going to pick up my thriller versus Clive Cussler's or James Rollins or So that's what I have to do when I'm writing the book. The marketing for it is, here's why the plot is fun. Here's why it's interesting. Here's why you're going to enjoy it. So yeah, I love that answer. Your book is not news. I wish it were, but it's not.
Yep, it is to your mama and your grandmama and your kids, but nobody else cares. I mean, there's, like I said, 1 million books self-published last year. So if you can figure out why your book matters, and that's always what you're pitching. If you start with, hey, I wrote a book, isn't that great? Have me on your show. They're not there to sell your book.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, they'll tell you to call the ad department. That's what that's for, you know? So,
Sure. Okay.
they need to know why it matters.
So on that kind of note, let's talk about the outcomes here, like the goals. What does success look like for you with a PR campaign?
You know, I think, it varies. I mean, it depends on, you know, the level of the author and, you know, whether it's publishing house title or it's indie book. I think ultimately, even with a lot of the publishing house titles, if they're a first time, second time author, the objective for me, I mean, big picture, long term, is to grow an audience of your own. You know, that's the
Mm,
whole idea, is that someday you don't need media anymore. You've got an audience that's built in, you know, and you're communicating with them throughout, and you're going to sell a certain number of books because they're your folks and they've been with you, and they've, you know, you don't you don't want to always have to depend on some crash media campaign or
sure.
spend a bunch of marketing dollars to sell your book. So do as much media as you can, point people back to your website, have them follow you on social where you can create a relationship with them, you know, that's yours. That's the long-term objective. So for me, it's books sold, sure, but I think the bigger win is to really increase, you know, your follows and your social audience. So that's the bigger picture.
And
If
you
you want to write more books, and if you're right, you got one book in you and this is it, then that's a whole different thing.
okay?
Um,
How so?
yeah,
Just
but if
because
you want to
then you're just
continue to write, yeah, well, if this is your one shot and you don't, and a lot of people don't care to do social, they don't want to do that, and I get it. You know, if you just got this one book in you and you want to sell as many as you can, yeah, you're going to need to, you know, buy Amazon ads and spend marketing dollars, and it's a
sure.
bit different strategy. You know, when you're doing those media, you know, interviews, you're pointing people to Amazon or back to your landing page where they can buy the book. But if you, you know, if you want to write, and you got several more books you want to write, then the objective really is, um, yes, you can point them to Amazon or wherever, but I want you to be compelling and interesting and entertaining on the air, so that people say, hey, I really like this person. I want to
Sure.
hear more. After this interview's over, I wish there was more. Where can I? So I'm going to go follow them on Instagram or somewhere else, and then all of a sudden they're in my feed, and then, you know, then I buy the book, but then I also buy the next book and the next book.
Because you're a fan of
You
the
know,
person.
or buy
You're
your
a fan of the author.
backlist. Right,
Yeah.
right. It's nobody wants to be sold.
Yeah.
No one likes being sold. So I don't want you to sell me a product. I want to like you, know you, like you, trust you.
I love
And if I do
that's
that,
this is the thing,
yeah,
right? PR and marketing, it's all the same thing. I'm loving this because this is I
yeah,
literally, and if I may, I get up on stage and I talk to authors about marketing. That's all. That's what I love to do, and I'm good at it. And one of the things I've come to say almost every time, especially regarding social media, just every author's like, "Well, I hate social media. I don't want to do social media. It sounds gross. I don't want to. Whatever. You know, they have the reasons, and they're valid reasons. But I always tell people, you're building social profiles to be attractive, not to attract. Right? You're not trying to
hmm
go on
right,
social media, on Twitter, X, whatever, and say, "Hey, buy my book." You're creating this online version of yourself, and if you've got a pen name, maybe it's the pen name version. Who cares? But you're building this online persona so that people who are going to like you, they see that and they know right away they're with their people. Hey, I found a person. I
mhm,
found my guy. They come to
yep,
my page. They go, oh, he likes whiskey, cigars, hockey, Colorado Avalanche all the way, not the Nashville Predators, never. You know, of course. So, and then, you know, okay, he's sarcastic, he's humorous. Like immediately, I want them to feel like, oh,
yeah,
if I like that sort of stuff, then I'll like this guy. And then eventually, maybe long time after the fact, they've started following me. They realize I'm an author and they, you know, go check out my books. It's very similar to what
yeah,
you're talking about. Like you're not pitching a book, you're not selling one book, you're selling yourself, you're selling the person, the author, right?
yeah. No, that's absolutely right. I mean, 1,000,000%. There's people they want to relate to you. You know, I get sold products all day, every day. I don't. They're not. It's not memorable. You know, it's unfortunate, I guess, in the sense that, you know, a lot of people don't want to do that. And again, I get it, but, you know, see, one of your commenters here says that they want to be invisible, and I mean, I get it, but good luck selling books. I mean, being invisible. I don't know. Like I said, you can spend a lot of marketing dollars. You know, you can, but without participating in the marketplace, without being a part of the conversation the marketplace is having, you're just another product. I mean, and so yes, people like Stephen King have sold tens of millions of books, but I mean, again, he's the 1/10 of 1%. That's great. If your books are that good and you can churn out 3 of them a year for 40 years, then, God bless you. But
But to be fair,
most
he's
people
also had
aren't
a
that.
lot of PR behind him. He's had a lot of marketing behind him.
Sure,
He's
yeah,
not
and the books have
standing.
been opted into films. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, he's
yeah,
not standing
totally.
solely on the quality of his writing. He's a great writer, don't get me wrong, but there are unlimited great writers, and so it's not just that. He's also had plenty of marketing and PR behind him, of course.
Yeah. Well, one of his first movie, if not his first movie, what was his first book? Was it Carrie? Was that his
Well,
first
his
book?
first book I think he sold was Carrie.
Right, and which became a film, which launched him, I
Exactly, yeah,
guess,
right.
right? I mean, you have to believe. But then, at that time too, there weren't a million books being self-published every year.
Right.
There's a heck of a lot less competition in the marketplace for Stephen King when he became Stephen King. So,
Yeah.
it's just, and I hate to say that to anybody, and this kind person on your comments here. I don't mean that to sound as harsh as it probably sounds, but I mean, it's just too many other people out there in the marketplace of conversation that are engaging and relating to people and building an audience that you're just not going to really be able to break through that if you don't participate.
Yeah, no, I
Outside of,
think
you may sell several hundred books to your local folks and your friends and and you may find your little niche community, but even then you can't be invisible. You got to find community. It's like anything else in life. You got to have community. So,
no, it's tough love, but it really is love. Like, it's not beneficial to an author for me to tell them, hey, if you just write really, really well, it's just going to blow up and you're going to make $1 million, because that's just not true. And of course, there's the exception that proves the rule. The random moonshot that happened to blow up. The Mark Watney. That's Mark Watney's the character. The Andy Weir, who writes The Martian, on a blog post. But even then, there was some stuff. There was some marketing juice behind it. Maybe he didn't do PR necessarily, but there was something behind it. The point is, any author who says, I just want to write for myself, that's fine. You're allowed to do. No one's going to take that from you, right? But the moment you say, I believe I can be an author and people will read me, that what you're saying is, I'm going to become an entrepreneur and I'm going to sell this book to people. I'm sorry. That's the truth of it. It might just be one person because you're not a very good entrepreneur. But the point is, you're not just an author anymore writing for yourself. You don't get to have both, right?
Yep.
And so that's just the way it is. I hate the fact that I got, I just finished this 80,000 word novel. Now I got to go write emails about it and send it to my list. But that's just what I have to do if I expect to have a career doing this, continue to have a career doing this. And I always remind people, look, if you want to talk about advertising and all that stuff, Coca-Cola is a pretty well-known brand. Pepsi is a pretty well-known brand. And they're both spending like billions of dollars a year on advertising. So you would think at some point you can stop doing it. You can stop advertising and paying all this money and doing the marketing and all that, but you don't. You can't, or you're just going to go away. And that's, and that's fine too if that's what you want. But anyway, yeah, I love it. I love talking marketing. Obviously, we can go down the rabbit hole and all that as well. But we are getting close to the end here. So we kind of want to wrap things up a little bit, but I'll give you maybe one more question. Maybe it's softball, maybe it's curveball. I don't know. We'll see. But for the indie author, for anyone listening, and you're talking PR and all this stuff, you got this firm, you can all this advanced stuff that you're doing. Let's say we've never heard of PR before. What's the first easiest step that they could take, like this week, right now? What's the first thing that would be actually helpful to their PR efforts? I hope that question made sense, but kind of bumbled over it. What would be the first step for an author who's never considered any of this before?
That's a big question.
Maybe it's just pay you a lot of money and have you do
there's
it
a
all.
lot to do. Sure, that's the answer, right? Go to jonesliterary.com and no, I think before you do anything else, I think you have to be able to tell me what's your book about, and I need it in 30 seconds. It's a classic elevator speech. You got to really distill it down. You mentioned whiskey. I love whiskey. You got to distill it down, man. You don't have people, especially nowadays, people's attention spans are absolutely microscopic. I mean, if you can't hook me in 15, 20 seconds, then you're done. I mean, as far as marketing and PR, you're not going to get anywhere because you're not going to get enough of anyone's time to give them a 6-minute spiel on why your book is, I think you really got to drill down. And once you know that, the real essence of what your book is about and why it matters to people, what's different about it, and then I can build from there, and I can reach out to media outlets. I can do some marketing. I can, but without that, you're nowhere. You're just absolutely nowhere. And so people say, well, I did that. I wrote the back cover copy or inside flap copy, or I've got, that's too much. I mean, you really, really got to distill it down. And I have challenged some of my authors in the past to see if they can give me that in 30 words or less,
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
Which doesn't feel like, and it's not a lot.
Yeah.
But 30 words or less, what is this book? And so that's where you got to start.
I love that, because that's something we can do, even if we're not going to engage in PR through, buying a package and, whatever. We can't do that. There's still immense value in understanding the core high concept of what our book is. I used to tell authors, and I still do this myself, I use 2 movies, blank meets blank. And I say movies specifically because there's fewer of them than books. And so there's a benefit to, there's more consolidation there. So if it's something people have heard of usually, rather than if it's this obscure book meets this obscure book, people see that ad or whatever it is that you're the PR, and they're like, well, I don't know any of those books, so I don't care. But if I say National Treasure meets Indiana Jones, you immediately get an idea of what I write. This kind of swashbuckling, pulpy action adventure fiction. It's not going to be about cryptocurrency or cyberpunk. So it has a feel to it. So that's a good way to do that. I mean, in my opinion, I think that would fit your 30 words or less rule, right? Would that kind of work if it's like a sell line?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And I think it's almost like you're in therapy. Your therapist may ask you, tell me your story. What's wrong? And you go into this 6-second story about your divorce and your parents were abusive or whatever, and at the end of the conversation, he really just does it. So it sounds like it's about pain, right? It sounds like it's about, it sounds like you're this. Let's get down to the bottom of the barrel. What is it really, really about? And so you just got to figure out, what is your book about? Who is it? Because then who it's for, and then who to reach out to that's having conversations about that topic. And just when you think you got it distilled down enough, do it again,
So when I go to therapy, she says, well, what's going on? And I tell her, and then she goes, well, that's been an hour. So next time I got to keep bringing. I've been telling the same story for 6 weeks now, but no, I love that. Keep distilling it down, make it as simple as possible. Again, people don't have a long attention span. And when you're going through, especially with PR and marketing activities, the people you're sending this stuff to, they don't have they're looking through, that one sentence in their subject line to decide to even open the email or not. I love that. That's very helpful. That's good advice. Where can we find out more about you, about the agency, Local PR Toolkit, whatever people might be interested in?
Yeah, man. Thanks for asking. jonesliterary.com is our website. Everything is there. I mean, all of our services are there. You see bios on our team, see all the authors and organizations, ministries, nonprofits we work with. It's all there. So jonesliterary.com is where you go.
That's great, man. Well, this has been, at least for me, this has been an eye-opening, very, very helpful conversation. I knew nothing about PR. I was feeling like, okay, there's probably some overlap here with marketing and all that. So it's reassuring to know that I'm on the right track with some of this stuff. But this is really helpful. I'm going to have to go check out. You saw it up there, guys, jonesliterary.com. Please do check it out if you're watching and want to know more about the PR stuff. I'm sure this is just a little taste of what Jason's able to get into. If you go reach out to him one-on-one and all that. And I'm excited to hear more about that too. But we've reached the end of this call today. So we're going to let the little outro thing play. So stick around, and we'll see you next week. Same time, same place. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks, Nick, for having me.
Absolutely.
Ebooks are great, but there's just something about having your words in print. Something you can hold in your hands, put on a shelf, sign for a reader. That's why we created D2D Print, a print-on-demand service that was built for you. We have free, beautiful templates to give your book a pro look, and we can even convert your ebook cover into a full wraparound cover for print. So many options for you and your books. And you can get started right now at draftedigital.com.